I'm Steve Damath. I just want to tell you a little bit about my childhood and my life and a story of redemption, a story of second chances and of hope. I had 4 siblings and my dad was a disciplinarian. I would either laugh or cry. And of course if I laughed I got in trouble even more. So I tended to cry, and then my dad, I'd be 11, 10, 12 and my dad would say, "When are you going to grow up and be a man?" And I'm thinking to myself, geez, I'm 12. I'm not supposed to be a man yet. I had to bury that part of me, and part of me said to myself, I'm not a man because I cry. You might say I was scared of my dad because of that. My dad really started struggling with his identity, and he lost his job again in South Carolina, and I was in 3 high schools in 4 years. So I never played sports. I never had anybody come up beside me and say, "Hey, you're good at this." Just never did have it, didn't have the confidence. So I missed out on sports. My dad was too busy. He worked a lot, he was never at home. He never engaged with his children. It was just work, work, and work, and that's what he did, and that was his identity. Then us kids were lost. We never went back to church in Texas, never did go to church again. And my dad got into drinking, my dad got into pornography, and my dad was cheated on my mom. So I got to see all that, and it was a 180 for my dad. And it pretty much just left us kids to be on our own, especially as teenagers. So I picked the wrong road and just was lost. And in '77, I got married at the young age of 21 and didn't really know what I was doing. I just didn't want to be by myself. She couldn't have children, and for some reason, we were going to church. Her family was in church, and so I went to church, but it was just play church. I could sing, I could stand up there and sing. I was a deacon, and but it wasn't real. It was fake, and I was a poser. Somehow we got accepted through Abilene Christian Homes, and I guess we put on a good enough show, and they allowed us to adopt a child, and we named him Denver. And 3 years later, I got a divorce, and I walked away from Denver and left. And I left his home and left him as a father. I was driving around in my Camaro, and I stopped in a parking lot, and it was dark, and the parking lot was lit, and I just stopped, and I said, "God, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore." And I need your help. And it wasn't a 180-degree turn. It took a while, but I knew then that God loved me. And He wanted me to be His own. He wanted me to be His child. And I knew that even though I was not perfect, that I had not lived up to what I thought I should be, that He still loved me and He would accept me. So it gave me hope. It gave me a new beginning. And I trusted in Him to help me do a turnaround, to turn my life around and to live for Him. And it wasn't a set of rules that I had to do. It was just to live for Him and to love Him and want to please Him. So that was the journey that started, and that was late 80s. And I married Debbie in late 88, and we moved to Waco, Texas. And it was tough. I sold my business, I remarried, and I left my son. And we worked it out, and it probably took us 10 years of marriage to really work it out. After about 5 years of marriage with Debbie and living in Hewitt, I get a petition in the mail from a lawyer in Brady where Denver and his mom lived and his stepdad. And the petition was for Denver to change his last name to his stepfather's name. And that really impacted me. That really hit me hard because I knew what it did was it brought back to me the idea or the stark reality that I had left Denver. It hurt, and I didn't want to change his last name because, a dad, that's his last name, that's everything to a man, and you know, you want your sons to have your last name. So I knew that I needed to do that for him. And so I signed the petition so that he could change his name. And we had Mackenzie Lane, and then we had Jake Preston. And I remember going into the delivery room and holding Debbie's hand, and it was at Hillcrest. And when the doctor was delivering Jake Preston, we actually didn't even have his name yet. I remember looking to see if he was a boy or not, and I couldn't see. The umbilical cord was in the way, and the doc held him up, and I kind of looked that way, and in my heart it leaped because I saw that he was a boy. Right after that, I go sit in the waiting room, and God speaks to me, and he tells me, Steve, I will never take your son's last name away from you again. He will always be Jake Preston Dameth. Just the fact that God knew that he would give me another son and tell me that his name would never be changed again. It's just a promise. He will give us those things that we desire. He will give us our dreams. And sometimes it's not when we want them, and sometimes it's not how we see them, but he gave me Mackenzie, and he gave me Jake Preston, and he gave me a beautiful wife, Debbie. And he's blessed me beyond anything that I could have ever asked for or thought of. Or he's been good to me. And as I look back at what my dad was in our relationships to his children, he's given me the second chance to look back at that and change that for my children. And I don't have to be, I can be a disciplinarian as God is. He disciplines his children, but he disciplines us with his love and his affection. And that's what I am towards my son and Mackenzie, is that I love them. And a real dad rejects passivity. He accepts his responsibility, and he leads his family courageously. And that's who a real dad is, and that's who a real husband is. That's the legacy that I want to leave.